Welcome all, it's Russ. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about advanced topics in printing. Now, the truth is that a lot of these things that I'm showing you, not all of them, but a lot of what I'm going to show you in this video is really advanced topics in string formatting, not in printing itself. So they can be used to create string variables. But what you'll use them for mostly is for printing things out. All right, so some various things we might want to do here. First of all, let's talk about F strings. In some of the previous videos, I've done some printing, and when I wanted to mix integers and strings, I put them on separate print statements because I couldn't concatenate them together. But in Python, as of version 3.7, I think it is, you can use something called an F string. All right. What an F string is it's a string that provides little slots where you can drop variables into them. So we already know that we can do something like print hello world. All right? And so it will simply print that string. But what if I wanted to treat each of these as a variable? I could say x equals hello, y equals world. And now what I can do is I can do a print. And I'm going to do still it's going to be a string, but right before the double quote, I'm going to put the character F. F double quote. This means it's an F string. Now, in an F string, it basically works like a string until it encounters something surrounded by curly braces. So what we can do here is we can say X. Now when it sees inside curly braces, it sees a variable. It's going to drop in the value of that variable into that point in the string. So I want to have hello space world. My strings don't have spaces in them. So I'm going to do curly brace, X closing curly brace. Then I will leave a space. And then I'll have curly brace, Y closing curly brace. I'm going to close this just like a normal string with my double quote. And then I'll closing paren for the function call. So what do we see here? This is a little place where we can drop in a variable. Then there's a single space. Then we're going to drop in another variable. This will print out hello space world exactly like the previous statement. Now the cool thing about this is that this is not limited to just strings, right? You could have done the same thing with concatenation. You could have done print x plus string with a single space plus y. That would have worked, but this would only work if x and y were already strings. In this case, these variables can be anything. So let's say x is equal to 1, 2, 3, and that y is equal to a list. 10, 20, 30. Well, in this case, our concatenation code would not work at all, but our F string works beautifully. This will print. First, it'll print from the first print statement, hello world. And then the second one will print 1, 2, 3, space, 10, 20, 30. All right, F strings, beautiful. You can, theoretically actually, you can drop in arbitrary expressions here. They don't even have to be simple variables. But you will be doing almost entirely simple variables in your code here. I've mentioned new lines. Well, so what is a new line? When you think about how a computer prints out characters, what you have to imagine is that it's not quite the same as if you were typing there at the keyboard, but it's a little bit like it. So let's kind of reverse engineer it. Let's imagine that we were typing here manually with a keyboard, and we want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What would be the sequence of keystrokes that we would type to get those out? Well, we would type a 1, then we would type a 2, then we would type a 3, then we would type enter. Then we would type 4, then a 5, and then a 6. And then we would type enter. And then there would be a 7, 8, 9, enter. So there's actually 12 keystrokes here. There's only 9 characters that show up on the screen, but there were 3 different times where we had to hit enter in order to insert a line break in between these characters. When we think about a string, remember that I told you that a string is basically an array variable. It's a line of boxes that contain values. And each of these values contains a special magic number. You don't have to know where these numbers come from. If you find it interesting, you can go look up an ASCII code chart. But there's some number on the computer that represents the symbol 1. Like how I want to draw a 1 on the screen. Not the number 1, but I want to draw the picture 1 on the screen. So we're going to put that number, whatever it is here, in our first slot. This is the character 1. Now we have the character 2. Now we have the character 3. Now we need a special character in our string that represents enter. What's the computer, like when we hit enter, what are we really generating inside the computer that causes it to go from here down to the next line? Well, that is a special character called a newline. And when we put it into a string, we represent it with \n. You're going to find, as you get more advanced in computing, you're going to find a lot of these what's called escape characters. When we do \n, we don't mean the letter n. We mean a special character. That's why we start with \. We got a special character, and what is it? It's the newline character. \n means insert a single character. It's the equivalent of hitting enter, but I want to put it into a string. So 1, 2, 3, new line, 4, 5, 6, new line, 7, 8, 9, new line. So what we have here is this is what we wanted to print out. This is what we would have had to type on a keyboard to make it happen. This is how we can represent that sequence in memory as a string. All right. So if this is drawing it out as an array, how can we create a variable like this? We can say x equals string 1, 2, 3. You've seen that before. \n to put in the new line. 4, 5, 6. \n. 7, 8, 9. \n. So this is how we type code. We've got 4 different representations of the same thing. Here's what we want to print. Here is the sequence of keystrokes we would have done if we were going to type it manually. Here's what it looks like in memory, that same sequence of operations, 12 operations. And here's how we encode it as a string. Character, 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 new line. Character, 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 new line. Character, 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 new line. What happens if we now do print X? It will print out 1, 2, 3, new line. It'll print this. Then it'll print out 4, 5, 6, new line. Then it'll print 7, 8, 9, new line. And you'd say, hooray! It works. But actually, there's a bug in here. Let me remind you something about how print works. Whenever you print a variable, print was always putting a line break after it. So if I had said print 10, print 20, what you would expect to see is you'd see 10 on one line, and then you'd see 20 on another line after it. And if you printed something else, that would come on a third line after that. What that means is that print is automatically adding a new line at the end of your print statement. So what happens if I say print foo after I've printed X? What am I really going to get? 1, 2, 3, new line. 4, 5, 6, new line. 7, 8, 9, new line. Blank line. Because what we're actually going to have is we're going to have two new lines one after another. What happens when you're typing? You hit enter twice. You stop the line you're on, you go to a blank line, and then you leave a blank line. You start printing down here. So this right here is blank. The way you get a blank line is by having two new lines back to back. Does our code here print two new lines back to back? Yes, it does. It prints a whole string ending in a new line, and then the print tags on another one. So this will print our string, leave a blank line, and then print foo after that. Now, how would we want to fix that? Well, there's a couple of ways. The simplest way would be to say, hey, anytime I print something out, print is going to put this trailing enter on automatically. That means I don't have to put it into my string if I don't want to. And I can get rid of it here. This code is improved. The blank line goes away. But there's another way you can do it. There's a way to tell print not to put that trailing new line on. All right, how would we do that? Better yet, let's talk about why you would want to do that. I mean, this is an example, but this is kind of a contrived example. Sometimes when you're printing things out, you could use F strings, of course. That's an option. But sometimes you find it most convenient to print your line in little pieces. So let's imagine that I'm going to do print foo followed by print bar. But what I really want is for it to come out looking like this. Obviously, if I do print foo followed by print bar, then I'm going to get foo line break bar, because this automatically puts a new line at the end of anything it prints. Is there a way to turn that feature off? Yes, there is. You can add a special second parameter. Print foo, comma, end equals empty string. What this says is, when you're all done printing, the thing I want you to tag on to the end of it is, instead of a new line, print an empty string. And so this can be a really nice way. You could say print something, end equals empty string. Print something, end equals empty string. Print something, end equals empty string. And then at the very end you say print one more thing, use your standard end. What will happen is only the last one will have a new line. So let's do that a few times. End equals empty string, print, baz, end equals empty string, print, ASDF, but ordinary print instead of adding end to it. What are we going to print? The very first call will print foo, but it does not put the new line at the end. So when you now print bar, it just adds on. Then it prints baz. And then finally it prints ASDF, new line. Goes down to the next line, so it's ready to print the next line. 3 print statements that did not have new lines, followed by 1 print statement that did. So one more feature. Handy feature from time to time, and that is triple quoted strings. Sometimes you want to print a long string, or you want to have a doc string, which we'll talk about in a bit. Sometimes you want to print a long string and it wants to have a whole bunch of new lines in it, but we've looked at that and we've realized ABC, new line, DEF, that's not real easy to read. Wouldn't it be nice if there was some way to define a string where it would look the way you want it to print? For that, Python has triple quoted strings. So if you start with a single quote, you can start with a single double quote character or a apostrophe character, right? We've got double quote, ABC, new line, DEF, double quote. We could do single quote, ABC, new line, DEF, double quote, or single quote. If we have just 2 quotes next to each other, what does that mean? That means an empty string. But if you put 3 quote characters all in a row, then you're in a special type of string. You're in a string that allows new lines in the middle. So we were looking at ABC, new line, DEF. We can also write this as 1, 2, 3, triple quote. Now, there's no spaces in the middle there. I'm adding some space so you can see it on the board. ABC, no closing quotes, DEF, triple quote to close it. These 2, let's erase the other one that was, these 2 string constants represent the same string. This is a 7-character string. A, B, C, new line, D, E, F. This is the exact same 7-character string. A, B, C, new line, D, E, F. And yes, if you want, you can put an F in front of it, and you can have an F string with the triple quotes. All right. And that, I think, is everything that I can think of to talk to you about with print statements and more advanced formatting. So Hope this video was useful, and I hope you learned a lot. Bye-bye.